There was a time when Nokia didn't just dominate the mobile phone industry, they were the mobile phone industry. The 3310th, the polyphonic ringtones, the snake game, global market share, indestructible hardware. They were everywhere. Then, seemingly overnight, they weren't. They lost everything. Billions in revenue, global relevance, and a commanding lead in a space they helped create. Was it Apple's fault? Android's? Or was the real killer sitting in the CEO's chair? This is the story of how Nokia collapsed and how it clawed its way back to life. Let's go back to the early 2000s. At its peak, Nokia controlled more than 50% of the global mobile phone market. Let that sink in. Half of every phone on the planet was a Nokia. Their products were iconic. Not flashy, but tough, reliable, and functional. The 3310 alone sold over 125 million units and became a cultural legend. In 2007, Nokia was pulling in roughly $40 billion a year in revenue, and its market valuation had surpassed $200 billion. It was the unquestioned king of mobile. But in June 2007, a single device changed everything. The iPhone. Apple's iPhone wasn't just another phone. It was a touch-based, app-driven computer in your pocket. Nokia's leadership dismissed it as a niche product. They believed people preferred tactile buttons. They thought software was secondary. They were wrong. And while Apple was climbing, another threat appeared. Android. Launched in 2008, Android was open source, customizable, and scalable across devices. It quickly gained traction with manufacturers like Samsung, HTC, and Motorola. By 2010, Android was everywhere. At first, Nokia wasn't too worried. They still had momentum. They still had global distribution. And they were selling hundreds of millions of devices annually, especially in Europe, Asia, and emerging markets. But the shift wasn't just about hardware anymore. The game had changed. Apps, ecosystems, software updates, these were the new differentiators. iOS and Android weren't just platforms. They were ecosystems with developers, app stores, and entire monetization strategies. And Nokia, it was still clinging to Symbian, an operating system that felt increasingly dated, bloated, and fragmented. By 2010, they still held 33% of the smartphone market. That's the wild part. They weren't dead yet. But here's where the real story starts to unravel. In 2010, Nokia brought in Stephen Elop as CEO, a former Microsoft executive. He was the first non-Finnish CEO in company history. He arrived with urgency, with tech pedigree, and with one infamous internal document, the Burning Platform Memo. In it, Elop blamed Nokia's culture of complacency, slow innovation, and fear of risk. He described the company as standing on a burning oil rig, with no choice but to jump, and jump they did. In 2011, Elop made a bold move. Nokia would abandon its existing smartphone operating systems, Symbian and MeeGo, and exclusively adopt Microsoft's Windows Phone OS. That meant rejecting Android entirely. Critics called it suicidal. MeeGo at the time was promising. Developers were intrigued. Nokia had even released the N9, a device running MeeGo that garnered surprisingly strong reviews. Many believed it was the future, but Elop killed it to align fully with Microsoft. Internally, many engineers were devastated. Externally, the industry watched in disbelief. Microsoft, for its part, was desperate to get Windows Phone off the ground. It had a slick interface, the Live Tiles design, and good ideas. But it was too late to the game. Apple and Google had already built a two-horse race. Nokia had bet on the third-place platform. The result? Disaster. In 2013, Microsoft acquired Nokia's phone division for $7.2 billion. It was supposed to be a rebirth. Microsoft would build hardware, Nokia would deliver design, and Windows Phone would finally take off. But it didn't. Windows Phone never cracked the app ecosystem. Developers didn't build for it. Users didn't switch to it. Market share never rose above single digits. Meanwhile, Android and iOS split the world between them. By 2015, Microsoft wrote down Nokia's assets. Billions lost. Phones scrapped. Elop was out. And just like that, the Nokia phone business, the one-time king, disappeared from view. But that wasn't the end of Nokia. While the world thought the brand was dead, the core company, the original Nokia Corporation, still existed. The part that didn't get sold off to Microsoft, that was the real heartbeat. Nokia still owned Bell Labs, a world-renowned research division with deep roots in communications. It still held powerful assets in mobile networks, broadband infrastructure, and global telecom. And in 2016, Nokia pulled a smart move. It licensed its phone brand to a new company called HMD Global. Founded by former Nokia execs, HMD would handle phones. Nokia would focus on networks. Post-2016, Nokia shifted its entire identity. It moved away from being a consumer electronics brand and leaned into being a B2B telecom infrastructure provider. In other words, if you were using 4G or 5G anywhere in the world, odds are Nokia was part of the network behind it. It began competing directly with Huawei, Ericsson, and ZTE, supplying 5G towers, mobile base stations, and cloud networking solutions to countries and carriers. And that shift wasn't just technical, it was strategic. Nokia began to position itself as a secure, trusted alternative to Chinese-made infrastructure. As the US and European countries started banning Huawei from their networks over privacy concerns, Nokia stepped in to fill the void. It scored massive contracts with Verizon, AT&T, Orange, Deutsche Telekom, and dozens of government-backed infrastructure projects. This wasn't consumer-facing work, but it was high-margin, high-stakes business. By 2022, Nokia was doing around 22 billion euros in annual revenue. Steady, profitable, and politically vital. And while the phone world had moved on, Nokia was thriving in the background, quietly becoming one of the world's most important telecom vendors. Between 2023 and 2025, Nokia began to see renewed confidence from investors. Its stock performance began to climb. Analysts praised its clean balance sheet, diversified income, and leadership in private 5G networks. More importantly, Nokia had found a sustainable model. It wasn't trying to be cool. It was trying to be useful, building the infrastructure that made every other device work better. And now, Nokia is working on next-gen 5G, industrial IoT, and private wireless networks for everything from smart cities to military bases. It's not sexy, it's strategic. And here's the lesson. Nokia's fall wasn't just about the iPhone, or Android, or even Stephen Elop. It was about a series of bad bets, choosing the wrong software, backing the wrong partner, believing too much in hardware, ignoring ecosystem lock-in, and perhaps worst of all, failing to listen to what the world actually wanted. But what saved Nokia was not nostalgia. It was adaptation. They stopped chasing phones. They focused on what they were good at: networks, hardware infrastructure, and long-term telecom innovation. They pivoted into relevance by going where the growth was, not where the headlines were. So what can we take from this? Big companies don't die from one bad product. They die from slow reactions to fast shifts. But if they're willing to kill their past, they can survive their future. Nokia went from being the king of the world to a cautionary tale, to a quiet giant that now powers the world's networks. If that's not a comeback, I don't know what is. What's your favorite Nokia memory? Did you have the 3310? The slide phone? Maybe one of those phones that felt like bricks but never broke? Drop it in the comments. And if you like this breakdown, hit like, subscribe, and turn on notifications. We've got more stories coming. The ones that show what happens when vision, timing, and leadership collide. This was the rise, the fall, and the rebirth of Nokia. See you in the next one.